It literally destroys our bodies. I am unhappy precisely because I keep hoping that everything will be different. But the truth is that many diseases arise precisely because of this internal stress. Diabetes, high blood pressure, gastritis, and often later oncology. If a person does not start helping himself, it is almost impossible to help him from the outside. Today I want to talk about energy. Energy is wonderful, but the real trouble begins when it runs out, when there is not enough energy for anything. The main reason for the loss of energy is that we do not know how to manage our mind. Recently, experts have found out during the day in the head of a person occurs from 50 to 70,000 thoughts, and only a few of them are really useful and get to the point. The rest is useless background noise. That's why information diet or detox is so important. Limiting the flow of unnecessary information helps to unload the emotional sphere. Think about it. Do you really need all that information you get every day? Today, many people are already trying to consume only cleaned, ready-to-use content, so as not to waste any energy, attention, or time. A worldview, that holistic perception of the world, helps a lot in this matter. Worldview is an understanding of how the world works and what place I personally occupy in it. If a person does not have a formed picture of the world, any random information simply does not find a response, is not put into consciousness. It becomes garbage, which he will never use. It is similar to the situation when you received an important paper or bought a useful book, but did not put it in the right place on the shelf, and then you can't find it. That's how it is with internet facts. If you don't have an internal knowledge structure, you just don't know how to use those facts. There's even a special effect that explains this, the Dunning-Kruger effect. A person who doesn't know something doesn't even realize how many things they don't know. And what is even worse, he is often sure that he got it right. But in the end, he is wrong, and a mistake can cost a lot, to yourself and others. So sometimes it is better not to know at all than to be sure of false information. There are two types of energy. The first is physical energy. We all realize that it is our strength, our inner energy. We often prevent our own body from revealing its potential. For example, if we have poorly organized sleep or forget about physical activity, the body cannot get rid of excess cortisol. And even worse, if we do not know how to manage stress, do not know how to get out of stressful states or live through difficult moments. Although there are many ways to cope with stress, our physical energy is most strongly affected by anxiety. There is a structure in our brain that constantly monitors the situation, filters significant signals from the outside world. It is called the reticular formation, like an antenna that spins and catches all the events around it. When this antenna catches a potential threat, other parts of the brain that are responsible for decision-making are activated. These are the amygdaloid bodies, the so-called amygdala. They analyze, is it dangerous or not? And based on this analysis, we react. If there is enough information to make a decision, the brain triggers a process of action. Thanks to this action, the body sheds excess cortisol and adrenaline, uses stored glucose. We cope with stress. But if there is not enough data to figure out what to do, anxiety and fear kick in. These emotions are felt by the body as a stress response. If the anxiety lasts only a few minutes, it's not dangerous. But when it lasts for days, weeks, months, or even years, it is chronic stress, which Hans Selye, the founder of the stress theory, called distress. It is distress that gradually destroys the body. Most chronic diseases arise from this very condition. Constantly high cortisol, excess glucose in the blood, increased adrenaline. Blood goes from the internal organs to the muscles, brain, senses. Blood pressure rises, blood clots, heart rate and breathing increases. If this continues for a long time, it leads to diseases, diabetes, hypertension, irritable bowel syndrome, gastritis. Blood outflow from internal organs becomes the cause of inflammation of the genitourinary system, urethritis, cystitis, prostatitis. Violates the intestinal microflora, begins dysbacteriosis, and later, unfortunately, can develop an oncology. In fact, most of the diseases that we face and that shorten our lives are consequences of chronic distress, a state of constant tension, uncertainty, inability to understand what to do, and, most importantly, inaction. Because it is action, movement toward a goal that keeps us healthy. People who have a goal beyond their personal life, and who get at least a little closer to it every day, recycle excess hormones and glucose. Such people live longer and are less likely to get sick. The second type of energy is psycho-emotional energy. Its loss also has its reasons. The first reason is contact with toxic people. There are people who cannot be helped. There's a good metaphor. Imagine that you are in a boat, and next to you a person is drowning in the water. If he's helping himself, rowing, trying to get out, you can save him. But if he doesn't even move, just drags you down, the boat will overturn, and you will both drown. It is the same with people. If a person does not want to help himself, if he only complains and blames everyone around him, it is impossible to help him. Even if you give him money or resources, he will spend them wrongly. These are the people who pull your energy. The second cause of loss of psycho-emotional strength is unfinished business. Any unfinished task is a source of hidden stress. When there is an unresolved issue hanging in your head and you don't close it, there is a constant internal conflict. The brain builds a whole chain that brings you back to this task again and again, as if reminding you, solve me. It's a vicious circle. Until the task is completed, nerve signals continue to spin along these neural pathways. The brain's functional system does not receive a signal of completion, and so the internal dialogue does not stop. Thus, each unfinished task steals some of your energy, even if it seems that you have forgotten about it. It is these unfinished tasks that literally suck the energy out of us and keep anxiety in the background. But there is another third cause of psycho-emotional energy loss. Unfinished relationships, most often resentments. When we hold a grudge, it's like putting a heavy stone behind our sinuses and forgetting about it. We may not remember who or what we resented, but that stone still hangs inside of us, preventing us from moving freely. Over time, such stones accumulate a lot. They weigh down our path, especially when we climb uphill, to goals, to peaks, to important stages of life. And it is at the age of 28 that the genetic program called anthropoptosis, the natural process of aging and self-destruction of body cells, is activated, and these accumulated stones, unfinished offenses and experiences, only accelerate this process, pushing us to disease and early fading. The hardest thing about resentment is inaction. We are offended, but we do nothing about it. And until this internal conflict is closed, the chain of neurons in the brain endlessly fires the same signal, draining us of psycho-emotional strength and causing anxiety. The fourth cause of loss of psycho-emotional energy is lying. Lying to others, but even worse, to oneself. Self-deception is much scarier than any external untruth, because when a person lives not his life, when he goes not to his goal, when he works at a job he does not like, when he lives with a person he does not like, when he refuses his real desires, he destroys himself from the inside. You know, as Freud said, there is such a concept, introjection. It is when motives, goals, and attitudes imposed by someone, society, parents, friends, become ours, but only formally. They seem to be lodged in us, but in fact, they are someone else's. We think that these are our desires, but in fact, we are not following our own path. And that's when the inner conflict starts to slow us down. At first, the body gives signals softly. Attention loses, memory deteriorates, there is no interest. We start to forget important things, to be late. Then the signals become harder. We start to stumble, fall, break, lose something important. And if a person does not stop and continues to drag himself where he does not want to go, the unconscious begins to destroy his body, starting an accelerated aging process. Because the unconscious knows, even if you achieve this not your goal, it will not bring you happiness. The fifth cause of energy loss is guilt and shame. When a person constantly gnaws at himself from the inside, blames himself for past mistakes, is ashamed of some actions. If guilt is a feeling toward another person, shame is a self-directed feeling. These emotions are a powerful source of internal stress, which leads to an increase in cortisol, and as a result, to neuroses, chronic anxiety, and loss of vitality. And another powerful factor is fear. Fear arises when I don't understand what's going on, when I don't know what to do. And especially often fear arises when I misjudge danger. At times like these, it's important to ask yourself an honest question. What's the scariest thing that could happen? For example, you're afraid of an exam. Well, what happens if you don't pass? The scariest thing is getting a bad grade. But you won't be executed, your life won't end, no one will destroy you. And if you think about it, there is always a way out. You can retake the exam, you can prepare for the remaining time. But instead, a person spins himself up half the night, can't sleep, imagining the darkest scenarios. But if you think about it honestly, there is always a way out. And realizing this already helps to reduce anxiety. So, to cope with fear, it is enough to come up with a reserve airfield. That is, a variant of the development of events if something goes wrong. For example, if you're afraid of failing an exam, just say to yourself, yes, I may get a D, but I'll have 2 more weeks to prepare, and I'll have time to learn the material. And once that thought is there, the fear goes away, the anxiety goes down. Why? Must it because the brain turns on a program of action, and action always calms you down. Even the brain's amygdala, which are responsible for feelings of fear and anxiety, let us go once they realize there is a plan. But there's another important cause of energy loss. It's inflated expectations. When we inadequately perceive reality, when we screw ourselves up with a picture of the future that the world was not going to give us at all. The world is organized in such a way that emotions arise from the difference between the dream and the result. For example, motivation is the difference between what I want and where I am now. The bigger that difference, the stronger the motivation. Imagine you are sitting in Siberia in winter, it's 30 outside, and you dream of being in the Maldives where it's +30. That's 60 units of motivation for you. You are ready to spend money, stand in lines, book tickets. Why? Because the difference is huge and that difference moves you. But when you get there and it's suddenly raining and only +15, there is another mechanism, emotion. Emotion is the difference between what I got and what I expected. You expected +30, you got +115. And even though in fact, +115 is better than your 30, you're not happy because you expected more. In your internal formula, 15, what you got, -30, what you expected, A -15. The bottom line is disappointment. This is how inflated expectations become the cause of high stress, devastation, and irritation. When we're not willing to accept that the world can give us less than we've fantasized, we inevitably get frustrated, and this takes a huge chunk of psycho-emotional energy. Therefore, awareness, adequate assessment of reality, and proper handling of expectations are the most important skills for preserving inner resource. And finally, what to do about it. Understanding these mechanisms is the first step to change. But further, it is important to master the techniques that will help you manage your emotions and state. Work with guilt, resentment, shame. To let go of these states, not to carry them through the years. Formulate goals and objectives that are really yours, not imposed by society or other people's expectations. Learn to hear yourself, your real desires, attitudes, aspirations. To build real dreams and goals that correspond to your nature, your personality, your inner needs. And if it is difficult to do this on your own, you can always turn to a coach, psychotherapist, who will help you to see and build this path. When a person lives in harmony with himself, with his goals, when he releases psycho-emotional energy, he becomes stronger, happier, healthier, and most importantly, he lives longer and truly enjoys life.